For RCR Wireless News, I'm Sean Kinney, joined today by Bruce Kelley, Chief Technology Officer at NETSCOUT. So Bruce, with Mobile World Congress coming up just next week, I really appreciate the time you're taking to speak with me about how the rapid evolution we're seeing in the service provider landscape is really driving evolution in the way that you approach service assurance. So given a lot of the trends that we're seeing, really the dominant shift towards software control of your network and cloud-based service delivery, in this world of NFV and SDN, how does it change the way that telecom operators have to approach service assurance?
Sure, Sean. Good afternoon, and thanks for having me today. So I think I want to just quickly take a step back and ask, why are the service providers going to SDN and NFV? I think the real main reason is they need to compete today. And if you look at the new players on the block, like the Googles and the Amazons, they basically can roll out a service in days or weeks. And if you look at a traditional telco, the way they build and deploy apps, it takes months and years. And so why is that? It's really because the Amazons and Googles are leveraging technology, right? They went to a pure software architecture, and in doing that, they we're able to accelerate and build agility into how the application is built and deployed. So you'll hear things like software, number one. Number two, you'll hear automation and orchestration. The way that they're building these applications out of software really is, you'll hear terms like microservices. So you'll have suppliers like Cisco and F5 and pick your virtual network function, whether it's a router, a firewall, supplying software as microservices. And they take these microservices and they link them together into chains. So what's happened is they can change the behavior at any moment. They could build a new service out of software links, microservices. They can change the behavior of a service just by inserting new links into the chain. So let's say I had a video service, for example, and I had in the first link in the chain, it was a firewall. The next one was a load balancer, different vendors supplying microservices. The third one was a router, and the fourth one was a video on demand server. The control there is in the service provider's hands. They don't have to wait for a massive application to be built. It's very agile. They can go in and change the features in that service. They could go in and put parental controls by dropping in another software element into that chain. So what does this mean to service assurance? It means the way that they're building these applications is very disruptive. It's changing to compete. And so visibility is going to become really, really important, because what's changing is it used to just be on a physical network. Now you mentioned NFV and SDN. Well, NFV and SDN is software. Software is being placed into the cloud. Clouds can be private clouds, things like OpenStack or VMware. And so in a service assurance world, if you don't change or adapt to a software model and build visibility into the cloud, you'll be blind. And you can't assure what you can't measure. So the first thing is visibility is crucial. You're going to need to be able to see the physical network, number one, like you always have. Your solution is going to have to adapt and be able to see in the cloud. And then lastly, it's going to have to be able to see in and out of the cloud. When you see these service chains, they're going to be built out of both physical, virtual, legacy systems won't just go away. They're going to blend them. And so I think it's this, what I call extensible architecture, with visibility being key. And visibility is going to be really what allows the carriers to accelerate and innovate with these technologies of cloud, IoT, 5G, next generation video, and so on to compete.
When you talk about really blending these legacy systems into a unified air interface to serve every conceivable use case and service requirement, what happens to the service chain and the network visibility at that point?
Sure, very interesting question. So if you kind of look at the history of the provider networks, really, they've always been changing. So you look at 2G, right? And then it moved to 3G, and then it moved to 4G, and so on. And what really is going on? Now you're talking about 5G, right? You're talking about service assurance. Well, if service assurance was done right, you would have built an extensible architecture. You just have to accept that it's a fact of life. Change is going to happen. And so let me give an example. If you looked at the difference between 3G and 4G, 3G data and voice were all converged on one pipe. then what they wanted to do in each of these cases, they're just making from 2G, 3G to 4G, the network's faster, lower latency. So what did they do on 3G to 4G? They split the control plane and user plane up when they went to 4G. They consolidated or collapsed the network to get lower latency. The same things are going to happen with 5G. And the same challenges are going to happen with 5G. You're going to have handover issues. So you mentioned network convergence. So one of the convergences going on right now and that we've been involved in, and it's been challenging in the sense that it's proprietary protocols. Standards need to kind of catch up. 5G needs to kind of take, but at the same time, you got early adopters. So take VoLTE in voice over Wi-Fi, a voice service. So many carriers of what they've done is they started out on a cellular network, right, out in the RAN in the last mile, which you mentioned, convergence. And then all of a sudden, they wanted to be flexible. They wanted to offload in different reasons. They want that call to be able to move off to Wi-Fi. Maybe you're adding video onto that call and so on. So what's in play here really is a voice service that existed. They wanted to give new features to the user. They took the RAN and they blended it. They took Wi-Fi, in this case, 4G cellular. And you can be moving, for example, on a train on that call like we're doing right now. And the expectation of the end user is that the call is not going to drop. I'm not going to have any service assurance issues with the voice service. And so I think the keys here in this convergence are, one, it's just to sum up. One, I said extensible architecture, that the old networks are going to have to work with the new, right? So it's not just there's a 5G network and you flip a switch. So service assurance needs to deal with that, and you pretty much need quite a bit of domain knowledge from the old to the new. And so there's a history there. I think the second thing is end-to-end intelligence. So when we talk about this last mile and what's going on, because you're moving and you've got mobility, I need the ability to simply track your phone call down to that level of granularity. I call that high definition. And so when you go to virtualization, it's even going to get worse. You're going to be in a service chain. The service chain might start out in one data center. It may move, right? You can scale up, scale down service chains depending on demand and need. So this end-to-end intelligence, I think, is a second important point that's going to be needed in service assurance. And then lastly, I think, which is the most disruptive, would really be service assurance. You need to move to an all software model, just like the routers did, just like the firewalls did. The service assurance solution, the probes and the servers that deliver it need to work as software, number one. And then more importantly, they need to play a role in automation. So if I'm automating a service chain and rolling it out, at the same time, I want to instrument visibility into there. That needs to be automated. Nobody's going to physically configure a probe. It's just going to have to dynamically, an example would be you're at the Super Bowl, right? And all of a sudden they may scale up the number of towers needed at the Super Bowl. Well, in a virtual network, they would just do that on demand. And then the day after the Super Bowl, it would go back down. Well, the visibility from a service assurance point of view would need to participate in that, what I call automation or orchestration event. And so it's just, taking an architecture that you have and making sure that it's growing with the times. In the move to software, I think is the biggest disruption.
Yeah, and you've hit on automation and orchestration a number of times, and I really wanted to make sure we really clarify the distinction that I've heard NETSCOUT make between data and smart data. So can you maybe tell us a little bit more about what smart data is?
Yeah, it's real simple. I think if you look at maybe the current state of the industry, right, with analytics, right? And as you get billions of things with IoT, you're going to need analytics, you're going to need machine learning. And really, it's a garbage in, garbage out discussion. So what does that mean? It means I believe there's been great analytics. IBM, HP, all these companies have had products that are doing superior analytics, but using inferior data, using what they can get at. And the richest data is the actual customer transactions, the real video stream, the real phone call. And so we call that wire data, if you will, or traffic flows. And that's what smart data is deriving itself from. It's looking at real transactions, both signaling and user playing, and it's in a scalable way, building an end-to-end picture, right? Of whether it's 2G, 3G, 4G, doesn't matter, or 5G. It's looking down at the granularity of per subscriber, what service that subscriber is doing, what location or cell tower or Wi-Fi access point that subscriber is coming through. So it's a very rich set of metadata that can be used for many use cases. Our traditional use cases have been operations and engineering for troubleshooting and assuring services. But now we're opening up smart data, and we're going to announce this at the show, to one, be low cost. Why? The move to software. We've moved completely to software with our service assurance solution. Number two is we've made it affordable. We basically using standard APIs. You don't need professional services. It's in standard industry formats. When we export that data, it can be used by NEMs to deliver customer care or CEM solutions. It can be used by security products to make the security products smarter. Security products won't just announce a denial of service and say, well, it came from this IP address. IP addresses change. So with smart data feeding security as an example, you'll be able to say, well, it was Bruce. It was this phone number that initiated the attack. He was on this cell tower in Boston. He was on an iPhone or an iPad. And so you can get very granular with smart data. So I think the big news is, software has been an enabling technology. We've decided to open up the API so that people can get more value out of their own data, their real customers' live data that's running. And what we've done is with the patented technology inside of smart data called ASI, Adaptive Service Intelligence, we've made it scalable. And so that's one of the challenges. We've been in this space 20 years, and we've got this rich data, the wire data we call it, or the traffic flow data, and nobody's been able to build it so that it can be consumed by big data. And what I mean by build it, they could build it, but not really in the real world cost effectively. And now those barriers have been broken with what we're terming smart data.
So give me the big picture here, Bruce, in this transition to all software when we see these hybrid networks, these increasingly fragmented as you introduce IoT devices and advances like that. Why does the service provider need to take an end-to-end approach? What does that do for the business?
I think really at the end of the day, it's two things. So the first thing, it's really they care about the experience of their customer, right? So when you're looking end-to-end, it's the only way you can understand the true experience. So if I'm on a phone call, and we were talking about converged networks at the beginning of the conversation, and I was on 4G, and all of a sudden that same call moved over to Wi-Fi, and it dropped. They want to look end-to-end. They want to understand and isolate that quickly. So it's about MTTR, right? How quick does it take when there is a problem for me to solve it? So the second thing is cost, total cost of ownership. So if I have a bunch of tools, it's going to get very expensive. Why? I have to train people to use it. I got to pay maintenance bills to multiple suppliers of that. If I start reducing the tool clutter and introducing end-to-end solutions, one is I find problems quicker. I don't have to train as many people. And then lastly, I think you're going to see new challenges with these new technologies. And end-to-end is going to be really even more critical than it was. And the reason is we talked about service chains, microservices, and these chains automatically scaling in, scaling out. Well, these chains aren't going to stand still. They're going to move, right? So that's the whole thing here is you can't guarantee that you start up on one set of compute nodes in an OpenStack environment, that thing is not going to move from Boston to London or to Chicago. That is just the way that this is being architected. So with all that complexity, I think end-to-end is going to be critical really at getting at root cause quickly. And it's going to be about CapEx and OpEx and total cost of ownership is the real business reasons of going end-to-end.
All right, and Bruce, we've got Mobile World Congress coming up next week. So in the run-up to the show, I was hoping maybe you could give us a preview of the messaging that NETSCOUT is going to bring, and also tell our viewers how they can connect with NETSCOUT when they're in Barcelona.
Sure, we're excited to see everybody and share what I've shared today in more detail. The messaging around the booth is 3 simple messages. One is accelerate. So we want you to basically compete. We want you to roll out those new SDN and NFV networks and IoT and 5G. And visibility is going to allow you to accelerate that, as we talked about earlier. I think this transformation, transform is the second word. So accelerate, transform, and innovate are the 3 key messages. And transform really is around the journey to the cloud, right? So you're going to not flip the switch overnight. You're going to have a physical network. You're going to want to have visibility into that. And at the same time, you're going to want to be looking into the cloud as we discussed. So the journey to the cloud in this transformation going on, you need continuity. And so I think our second message is service assurance continuity. Whether it's old or new in that journey, we can help you. And I think the third message, innovate, is all around the question you asked me around smart data. And what we're trying to do is smart data was really being controlled to engineering and operations. And there's a lot more parts of the business, whether it's the marketing group, trying to understand what services people are using, what devices they're on, making business decisions, or it's the security group that wants to innovate with smart data, or it's the service assurance people, they all can leverage that same investment. They don't need to buy it 3 times. So really getting the value out of the existing investment and putting it into other lines of the business is what we're enabling. And lastly, I think you asked me, how can you hook up at Mobile World? So we got 3 simple ways. The first way is just go to www.netscout.com. When you get to the site, you can book an appointment and you can meet myself or one of my colleagues in the booth. Secondly, you can find us in Hall 1. Just look for the NETSCOUT booth in Hall 1 at Mobile World. And then lastly, we're on Twitter, and the feed for Twitter is https://twitter.com/NETSCOUT.
All right, very good, Bruce. Well, I really appreciate you sharing NETSCOUT's vision for the future of service assurance with us, and we look forward to catching up with you next week in Spain.
Hey, I enjoyed it, Sean. That was awesome. Thank you, and have a good day.